a private runway in Anchorage, a red carpet rolled out for history, or for spectacle. Donald Trump and Vladimir Putin meet face to face for the first time since 2019, and every second is a test of power, perception, and global leverage. This isn't diplomacy. This is high-stakes theater with the world watching. Trump arrives confident, his demands sharp. A ceasefire in Ukraine, results on the table before anyone leaves. Putin, unflinching, exudes the quiet menace of a man who has weathered sanctions, scandals, and isolation without blinking. Meanwhile, the absence of Ukraine's President Zelensky sends a silent signal. In this room, optics are as lethal as rhetoric. Alaska is no accident. Where Russia and the US are closest, the stakes are magnified. For Trump, this is a gamble for prestige. For Putin, it's a stage for strategic repositioning. Cameras flash, diplomats hold their breath, and the world doesn't just watch, it recalibrates. Every handshake, every glance, every subtle gesture carries a message more powerful than words. This meeting isn't just about policy, it's about power, influence, and the billionaire game behind the headlines. Welcome back to Zenith, the channel that takes you behind the curtains of the world's wealthiest and most powerful figures, exposing their private lives, fortunes, and the high-stakes games they play away from the public eye. Before we dive in, make sure to subscribe and hit the bell so you never miss an inside look at global power in action. On this day, Trump's agenda was unapologetically direct. He demanded an immediate ceasefire in Ukraine, a fast and visible halt to the conflict that has dominated headlines and strained alliances for years. Yet across from him stood Vladimir Putin, the man whose country ignited the war, silent and unreadable, a figure who has survived decades of sanctions, international scrutiny, and geopolitical isolation without ever showing weakness. Not a flicker of compromise, not a concession in sight. The stakes were heightened even further by Zelensky's absence. Ukraine's president, the very nation under siege, was excluded from this critical meeting, igniting outrage and confusion on the global stage. For Trump, this was more than a political maneuver. It was a high-stakes gamble. A misstep here could mean trading American credibility for an empty handshake, letting the optics of diplomacy overshadow the reality of power. Every word, every gesture, every pause carried consequences that extended far beyond Alaska's runway. This wasn't a conventional summit. It was Trump's stage, a meticulously choreographed spectacle designed to showcase himself as the billionaire dealmaker capable of halting a war. The smiles were rehearsed, the handshakes calculated, yet behind every gesture, one question loomed. Would this be remembered as a breakthrough toward peace, or just another photo op destined for headlines with no real consequence? Donald Trump has always thrived on high-stakes deals, but in Anchorage, his ambition hit an entirely new level. Facing cameras and flashing lights, he repeated his demand for an immediate ceasefire in Ukraine, emphasizing that nothing less would satisfy him. "I want the killing to stop," he declared, turning what should have been a measured diplomatic negotiation into a gamble played for global attention. Every word, every pause, every pointed glance at Putin was amplified by the press, transforming Alaska's airbase into a theater of geopolitical theater. For Trump, this was far more than policy. It was performance art, a demonstration of billionaire audacity. He cast himself as the only leader bold enough to confront Putin directly, pressing for results that most diplomats wouldn't dare promise. Yet the stakes were immense. His uncompromising demand came without a roadmap, leaving unresolved questions about land, strategy, or concessions that would inevitably follow. By daring to set such an ambitious benchmark, Trump risked his credibility on the global stage. Was this a masterstroke of audacious diplomacy, or a carefully staged setup for a historic humiliation? The world watched, aware that either outcome would leave an indelible mark on history. Perhaps the most shocking element of the Alaska summit was not what happened inside the meeting room, but who was left outside. Ukraine's President Vladimir Zelensky, whose nation has been torn apart by more than 3 years of war, was not invited to the table. While Trump and Putin walked the red carpet and posed for cameras, Ukraine's leader was left to watch from afar, powerless over decisions that could seal his country's fate.
She's asking, what if Russia breaks the ceasefire?
What if anything? What if a bomb drops on your head right now?
For Zelensky, the message was devastating. He publicly warned that any deal made without Ukraine's involvement could never be legitimate. His statement echoed a deeper fear that global powers might decide Ukraine's destiny as if it were a bargaining chip traded between billionaires of geopolitics. The exclusion also raised questions of trust. Could Trump truly negotiate peace for Ukraine without its voice? And did Putin view Zelensky as so irrelevant that he refused even to acknowledge him as a legitimate leader? Billionaires thrive on cutting deals in private rooms, but in this case, the stakes were measured not in profits, but in lives. The absence of Ukraine was more than a diplomatic snub. It was a chilling reminder that in the world of high power, those who bleed on the battlefield are not always the ones deciding when the war ends. For Vladimir Putin, the Alaska summit was more than just another meeting. It was a redemption arc. After years of isolation, sanctions, and even an international arrest warrant, he stepped onto American soil, not as a pariah, but as an honored guest. The images told the story. A red carpet laid out at a U.S. Air Force base, Donald Trump clapping as Putin approached, and the two men sharing a warm handshake before slipping into the same limousine. The perception shift was dramatic. Under Biden, Putin was widely seen as a ruthless dictator. Now, he was being treated like a respected statesman, even a partner. For Putin, that mattered more than words. No speech could undo the stigma of war, but the image of America's president greeting him with warmth carried immense power. In that moment, he achieved what many billionaires crave: legitimacy. Much like hidden billionaires use lavish events or private yachts to regain influence in elite circles, Putin used Trump's stage to reintroduce himself to the world. He didn't need to speak. Every gesture spoke for him. The symbolism was enough. Yet the question lingered. Was this a step toward peace, or a masterful act of image-making from a man who plays the long game better than most? In politics, as in billionaire life, spectacle often outweighs substance. In Alaska, the world was watching body language as much as policy. Trump and Putin delivered a carefully choreographed show. A firm handshake that lingered, a guiding pat on the arm, and smiles perfectly timed for the cameras. The defining moment came when both men entered the same limousine together before the talks officially began, a private ride signaling that the real negotiations were happening out of public view. It was a scene straight from a billionaire playbook: power, control, and influence, all on display. Observers couldn't miss the contrast with just a few years earlier, when Putin was widely demonized around the globe. Now, the same man was being granted what billionaires prize most: validation through association. For Trump, every moment was deliberate theater. By staging this display of camaraderie, he positioned himself not just as a negotiator, but as a peacemaker whose personal presence could influence outcomes. Yet beneath the smiles, critics wondered, is this a real step toward peace, or just an illusion of unity? Alaska wasn't a random choice. Sitting between America and Russia, this icy frontier became the stage for one of the most symbolic meetings in modern history. Away from war-torn Ukraine and distant European capitals, the location felt neutral, yet charged with meaning. Its isolation framed the summit as intimate and exclusive, making every gesture, every handshake, magnified under the world's gaze. But geography also spoke volumes. For Americans, it was a display of control, Trump hosting the summit on home turf. For Russians, it signaled proximity and leverage, a reminder that Alaska sits just across the ocean from their homeland. Ukraine was absent, Europe was sidelined, and the world watched from the outside. In global politics, just like in billionaire circles, location is a statement of power, and Alaska made it unmistakably clear. This summit was crafted as much for spectacle as for diplomacy. For Donald Trump, this summit was more than a handshake. It was a gamble that could define his legacy. After rolling out the red carpet, greeting Putin with smiles, and showcasing the warmth of their interaction, Trump had raised expectations sky high. The problem? Without a concrete result, a ceasefire, a signed pledge, or even a symbolic step forward, he risked walking away empty-handed. And in the billionaire world of politics, appearances matter just as much as outcomes. Trump himself fueled the stakes. Before departing Washington, he posted in all caps, "High stakes." That wasn't hyperbole. By giving Putin such a lavish welcome, Trump effectively restored him to the international spotlight. If Putin refused to bend, Trump could look like the man who legitimized Russia's leader without extracting any concessions. For his supporters, success meant proving he could do what Biden never managed: sit Putin down and stop the war. For his critics, the risk was humiliation, a photo op without progress. Billionaires often boast that pressure is where deals are made. Trump embodied that mantra here. betting that sheer will and charisma could deliver peace. But history has taught us pressure can either forge diamonds or shatter reputations. Which would it be for Trump in Alaska? From the historic reunion after 6 years to the red carpet showmanship in Alaska, this summit had all the hallmarks of billionaire-style diplomacy, spectacle, symbolism, and staggering stakes. Trump positioned himself as the dealmaker who could end a war, while Putin seized the chance to re-enter the global stage with honor. Yet Ukraine's absence spoke volumes, raising doubts about whether peace could truly be forged without those who suffer most. For Trump, the pressure was immense. Deliver a breakthrough or risk becoming the man who handed legitimacy to Putin for nothing in return. In the end, this was more than politics. It was a performance where every handshake and smile carried the weight of nations. Did Trump walk away with history in his hands, or just another photo opportunity? That's for the world to decide. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more stories from Zenith. Thank you so much for watching, and we'll see you in the next.